I won't say much. I'm just going to welcome each speaker onto the stage and let them speak. We have 5 really interesting sessions today, so we'll keep the time for questions somewhat limited, but hopefully there'll be time at lunchtime if you want to follow up further. So for the first speaker, I'd like to welcome Teresa, who will let you introduce your topic. And
thank you very much.
Thank
you, and thank you all for coming along. My name's Teresa McKinnon. I'm Principal Teaching Fellow here, so I haven't had to come very far. And what I'm going to talk about is a project that has recently finished, and I'm just going to welcome up on stage as well here. Not that this isn't daunting enough that you have to come up on stage, but 2 of my colleagues from the library. So can I ask you to introduce yourselves reasonably near to the mic?
Yes, I'm Kate Courage, and I'm the Academic Support Librarian for the School of Modern Languages and a couple of other departments as well.
My name is Tracy Dix, and I work in the teaching and learning team at the library, supporting the academic support librarians with embedding digital literacies and information literacies within academic departments.
Great, thank you guys. And you'll be hearing from Kate and Tracy, who have been very helpful supporters of the project and people involved in the project. My main focus really today is going to be on the takeaways. What of this experience of a project, and I've project managed lots of different projects in the past, might be useful for you to take away and might be useful for you to try out. So you will see more depth, and scattered around randomly on the ends of the rows here, you'll get a little bit more insight into the details of the project if you scan the QR code on either the postcard or the leaflet that's out at the end of the row. So please do feel free to move along, grab yourself one of those. If the remnants from last night are anything to go by, and you're now feeling, actually, I'm not really bothered about listening to people and watching screens, you can at least browse the outputs through using the QR code and see what we produced as part of this project. The School of Modern Languages and Cultures is a recently formed school. I'm a language teacher. I work within the Language Centre, and we're now part of the School of Modern Languages. So we have different and diverse histories within that school, and what I wanted to do was to make sure that we had a way of surfacing some of the things that went out and involving students and other stakeholders in which sort of things now we needed to take forward in terms of teaching and technology-enhanced learning. So the name of the project was Digital Learning and Teaching Languages in the Digital Age. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we went about producing those takeaways that you can browse. My role within the project, apart from project management, is also a background as a CMALT of somebody who wants to embed digital literacies within the experience of language learning. So I was looking for ways of discrete contextual skill development for all the participants. Now, I think probably most of you are familiar with this. Whenever you embark on a project, it's worth doing a little bit of a SWOT analysis, and we sit down, or I sit down and do that and think very carefully before we actually embark on the project around what sorts of things are going to come up. And this is what came in terms of qualifying these things in terms of known knowns. Known knowns really were the resource. I knew we wouldn't have the resource in terms of time or budget that we needed to achieve the goals that myself and the staff team had decided that we needed to achieve. So that's a case of sort of, okay, are we going to live with that? And we decided that it was worth doing, and therefore we were going to live with that. The project itself was initially written as 2 separate projects, one focusing on learning and one focusing on teaching. We were approached by those evaluating the project who basically said, well, we like the ideas, we can only give you half of the budget, how much are you going to deliver? And we decided as a team we wanted to deliver it all, so we rewrote the project in a way that would hopefully enable us to do that. The supporters of the project are WIHIA, the Warwick International Higher Education Academy. This is a recently formed body, very much part of the unknown knowns, in as much as the body of WIHIA, and I'm a founder fellow of the organisation, is very recent in Warwick. So there was very little awareness of its existence. As you've seen if you've walked around campus, this is a huge campus, lots and lots of diverse activities going on. So in terms of unknown knowns, we didn't know what impact that was going to have on the outcomes of the project as to whether people were aware of we're here. Hopefully we've done a dissemination job today by putting that literature out, and do feel free to share it and pass it around. And there's some auto tweets going on from Warwick Language, which will send you some links as well if you're interested in finding out more about We're Here. We're Here is all about increasing the focus within this very research-focused institution on teaching and learning. So it's the ideal space to support the sort of activity we're going to do. In terms of the unknown unknowns, well, I was going to be working with a team, most of whom I'd never met before. The timing was going to be problematic because actually the timing of the project was going to be covering exam periods, so how much student engagement we would get during that period we knew was going to be difficult. There was going to be a great reliance on remote working in order to achieve the outcomes of the project. So let's just show you the individuals involved. It's a very small team. Thanks to We're Here, we were able to offer these students a small amount of money. Well, I say small amount, actually for these students it was above minimum wage. So sort of £10 an hour for participating and producing to contribute to the project. I don't think without that we would have had the commitment and the involvement that we had. But in order to achieve that, in order to be paid, they did have to go through some hurdles. They had to register with Unitemps. They had to find their way around an online system in order to claim their funding. So there were quite a lot of barriers in there for them to overcome. And of course, that involved a lot of one-to-one support as well to help that. So in fact, we ended up with just one launch session, one opportunity to meet face-to-face as a team. So across this team, you can see students, some of whom are SMLC students, some are from sociology. You can see Kate and Tracy up there. You can also see myself. And then you've got some students from sociology, some students who had heard about the project and were interested and wanted to get involved. But I knew that as we were going to be doing a lot of this online, the immediacy of communication was going to be really important. So the models in my head were very much around Gilly Salmon and how we actually engaged people and brought enough confidence from this small group of people and a meeting that was really very short. Let me just pass you to Kate.
Thank you. As a librarian, librarians Tracy and I were really delighted to be invited to join this project. I think because of this morning's keynote, I don't have to do too much of a hard sell on what the library can do in terms of working with academics, so thank you, Jane, for that. But our main mission, particularly in our team, is to support teaching and learning and encourage students in their ability to find and use information. And this is just a more innovative way to do it, but one of the many ways that we try and work on that. So Tracy and I, on behalf of the library, were able to step in at kind of key moments in the project and collate resources that we already had in most cases that would help the students proceed with their research. At some points this was getting started with copyright, bringing in Creative Commons. At other points it was bringing together resources on research methodology and putting them online in the space and at the time when the students needed them. And we also joined the team and offered support face-to-face and online with the students as they navigated the resources and found the information that they needed to create their own outputs. And so in some ways it seems separate from the library's kind of core mission, which is often seen as being about books and reading materials, but it's completely core, as I say, to what we do in trying to supporting students, supporting their research and their learning. So we really enjoyed the opportunity to work with Teresa's team and particularly working with these student researchers. I'll pass over to Tracy.
Oops. So I'm coming at this from more of a digital literacies kind of perspective, and we learned a lot about the students from this project. And I think part of the reason it was so effective was because Teresa worked really hard to create this level playing field between the staff and the students. So our first meetup was in a very warm room in the School of Modern Languages, and the staff and students were all sitting together. We were all engaging in David White's Visitors and Residents activity. We were playing a card game that was produced by the Disruptive Media Learning Lab at Coventry. And and we talked over coffee at the Humanities Cafe. I mean, it was so effective that I didn't even realize till later that I'd mistaken one of the academics for a student. I just thought he was really outspoken. But I think this went a long way in showing students how much their perspectives were valued on the project, and more so than staff in many respects, because we wanted to learn about their experiences with digital literacies. This also partly took place over the exam period. So when students and academics were preoccupied with assessments and students' outputs started trickling through, Kate and I were able to support the project by interjecting on the discussion forums and just making the students feel that their thoughts and their ideas were valued, and I think that helped to keep the momentum going.
It certainly did, and it was really, really important that these sort of balancing of roles was established and that the students felt that they were co-researchers on this project. It was very important for me as well that I needed to step back. I was facilitating and not expecting particular results from their outputs. So we used these three spaces, a Moodle course, which actually is within our Moodle that's optimized for interaction. So we had the Blackboard collaborators for weekly meetings online and drop-in points, and they were used by those who were interested in doing such things. We also have the Mahara, which is a private space, and actually encouraging people to use Mahara to pull their research together and reassuring them that it was private until they decided to share was really important. So we were hoping through that to make them think about privacy and their public space and what they can do in different spaces, and also to move them through that whole permissions aspect of contributing. It was very important that I didn't influence that other than taking their ideas on board. So the project design, for this I drew on a way of describing learning in the 21st century, hertagogy. Can I take a quick pan around the room? Has anybody heard of hertagogy? Yes. Hertagogy, if you Google it, there's a community of practice out there. It's a way of describing, now in this information age, how we can much more easily navigate and find resources, and how actually to optimize the learning as a result of that. So the students are encouraged to explore and jump around and create stuff, collaborate, connect, but also reflect. And reflection is the vital part of this process. And once you've created something, that moment where you then decide to share it is probably the moment when you reflect the most. So before you send me that email and say, okay, you can add my pages to the group, you're probably thinking, am I really happy with it? And I think it was actually fundamental in terms of the quality of the outputs that they produced as a design. Hayes and Kenyon, 2001, started to look at this, and Steve Wheeler, whose opinions I respect greatly, describes this as a form of flaneurism, which, being a French language teacher, I'm particularly drawn to. A flaneur is somebody who saunters around observing. Sounds a great job, doesn't it? I'd like to be a flaneur. Please employ me as a flaneur. What we were encouraging people to do was to saunter around digitally and observe what they saw and think about it and share their thoughts with us. So finally, I think the crucial outputs for us and outcomes were the time. And as we know, time is money, and we didn't have enough of that, so we just had to stretch ourselves. We were the elastic resource. But the time to reflect and the time to question, the ability to connect these students as well to thinking about digital capabilities. So clearly GISC's framework for that was helpful, but also Belshaw's essential elements. I think there's some great work there that we're able to draw on. Chickering and Gamson as well, principles for undergraduate education. You'll see all of these links being tweeted on my account, so if there's something you want to investigate, I've done quite a lot of work in those sort of areas. It was interesting to me that none of these students, who are all learning languages in some context or other, in fact the only students out of the entire group who had thought about using social media for their language study were the ones who were studying with the Language Centre. So they're not specialist linguists. That's the space where we do tend to encourage them to think about how useful it is to follow French tweets and how much possibility there is for their language learning there. So those were key outcomes. There's obviously more details. on the Padlet board that I've shared with you as well through that QR code. The where next. So it would have been great to have a follow-up, and we will try and have a follow-up meeting now face-to-face with them and to give them some feedback on the overall outputs and maybe move them further forward. This was the little pack of cards that Tracy referred to. These are available under Creative Commons license on the DMLL website and translatable. It's a great little game, inventing a story. We did it as a team game, and it really did get us talking. We're linguists, so we like to talk. So we had much more close collaboration as a result of this, and I got to know the individuals in great detail. We used an autoethnographic approach to get them to reflect on their thinking about their relationship with technology, and that surfaced some wonderful things, so that was really useful. We're hoping to embed and spread the process into the institutional digital skills plans, and I think Tracy might have something to tell us on that very quickly.
So in terms of where next, in terms of digital literacies at Warwick, a couple of us from the teaching and learning team at the library are working with the School of Cross-Faculty Studies on a certificate of digital literacy. And I know that Amber's academic technology team is also developing a digital capabilities course. So there are these ripples of activity, and we've also borrowed some of Teresa's activities and ideas in planning these outputs. And hopefully, with knowledge sharing and these projects that are running, we'll be able to take it to a more institution-wide process at Warwick.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you for coming. Any questions?
Stay there in case there are any questions.
I will.
And
okay.
we are going to have, I think Martin's going to run around with the microphone because we are live streaming this.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any questions? See one in the back. Way up.
Oh, Martin, somebody right here.
I have actually a couple of very quick questions. So one, that you did this, it looks like a very good project. How does your institution, how do they see it? And did you get any sort of recognition, or formal, informal? And next question is kind of linked to it, that are you hopeful that, you will be able to expand it in future? You did mention, but what are the chances?
I think, well, the chances, I'm not a betting person, but the chances I'm going to leave out of the question. It was very much an opportunity to see what we can do, and using the knowledge that I have from computer-mediated communication in language learning, how that could be applied as well to digital skills embedding more widely. I think Tracy's conversations with skills folk may help us. How much these sorts of models could be scaled. I think it's a delicate thing because it's very much about individuals and personalities and group dynamics, but I think it could be done. But big question mark there for me, really. in terms of how the institution recognised and valued it, that was through We're Here, and through the Warwick International Higher Education Academy. Thanks.
One more question.
Hi there, Justin Steele-Davis, University of Derby. I might have missed something right at the beginning. Was this for credit, or was this sort of an extra support project? Okay, so it's an extra support project.
This wasn't for credit at all, but it was for money.
Right.
So there was payment for students who contributed to the outputs.
Okay.
But it was entirely driven by their choices. So we set up a framework. The Hertagogic approach really essentially sets up a framework for people then to choose their own way through and engage in the learning that they wish to do.
Okay, so it's almost like an extra credit type activity, but they were funded to do it.
That's where you'd categorise it, I guess, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think that's all the questions we've got time for, but thank you very much.
Thanks, thank you.
And just moving on to our second speaker, I'd like to welcome Sonia Grusendorf from London School of Economics, and I'll let you just...
Okay, yeah. So she's already said it, but I've written it down, so I'm going to say it again. I'm Sonja Gusendorf. I'm a senior learning technologist at the London School of Economics. And I want to begin with our conference theme. So themes are useful frameworks. They give structure and purpose, order, form, and substance. They're constraints against which our thinking can grow and prosper, like a clematis against a garden wall. Themes are frameworks, and they work by keeping things in as well as keeping things out, which means we can ask, at the exclusion of what do we focus on this year's clearly connected concepts, connect, collaborate, and create? I would add the notion of care for a start, but not because it has been excluded, but rather because it is implicitly already there and it deserves to be made explicit. Care is the name for the realm within which connections, collaboration, and creativity can unfold in the first place. In care, we can more properly examine the question why. For example, why at this year's conference we should care about connections, collaborations, and creativity. Why I care about the visual, and why anyone cares about anything at all. So today I take care of my work through the lens of connect, collaborate, and create. So this is what I promised in my abstract, that I would reflect on a rather loosely defined design project. This is what I promised, and I intend to keep, if not exactly to the letter, this promise, or rather not to all the letters, but just only, perhaps only these ones. That I will use my project as a springboard to consider the visual, that I will wonder why and how aesthetics, the beautiful and good design matter to us, and consider how, if at all, it matters that learning technologists bring their attention, their care, to the visual also. So clearly, the why is more meaningful than the what and the how. Why does good design matter? Equally clearly, without content, the what and the how, the why would simply sit there, annoying and intrusive like a child that wants answers but doesn't tell us what it wants the answers to be about. So I hope you will appreciate that. First, I will do some mundane presentation context, also known as this is what I did, and then I will try to keep this as short as possible. Okay? So in March 2015, Peter Bryant, the head of our department, came to me and said, I want you to lead on the design project. That's what he did. Get some graphic designers to make us some visuals, choose some filmmakers to work with and celebrate our e-learning innovators, put together a pool of young student artists. So I was to create a creative hub that the LSE academics could draw on for all aspects of their teaching. And note that the teaching dimension is here really essential. Of course, the LSE, like most universities, has its own design unit, but their remit is not pedagogical. And that was virtually all he actually said to me. And there's nothing more brilliant than be given a remit that is entirely vague, because it means you can fill it with meaning as you see fit. So I was very lucky. In any case, I did understand the remit to be meaningful. The intention was clearly to elevate the visual, to recognize its rhetorical power, its ubiquitous presence and cultural, social importance, in short, to bring it back to its proper place, which it had somehow lost at the overly textual LSE. So as part of this, we created a series of video celebrations and articles of academics who properly innovate their teaching practice with us. This was a small nod to understanding that although research, teaching and administrative burdens on academic staff have increased exponentially over the last 30 years, recognition and reward are given exclusively to research output. You'll all be familiar with that. Studies have shown that a thank you does a lot to increase academic job satisfaction. So with the LSE Innovator Series, we say thank you to those who care about teaching. But more importantly, this focus on visual creativity that I was given allowed me to re-examine the use of our VLE. Moodle. Here was a chance to invite academics to re-examine their relationship to using Moodle in their teaching, well, if they ever had one. A chance to persuade them to view it as a space at which learning can happen, as opposed to a space into which we shovel inordinate amounts of text, badly arranged, obtrusively placed, as if to constantly shout, all learning is reading. So we opened a call for academics to ignite my Moodle. And unsurprisingly, almost no one answered. Unsurprisingly, because Moodle is boring. And its boringness is entrenched, certainly at the LSE. I find it boring. When I see our LSE Moodle, I want to die. I blame this on Moodle having been misunderstood from the outset and then systematically abused over the years. It has become an administrative tool at worst and a glorified, overspec Dropbox Plus at best. Some blame Moodle itself, pointing to it being cluttered by default. I blame me for not having tried harder to make its potential understood. Now, my excuse is that when I look at our Moodle, I want to die. Through the design project, I have rediscovered my will to live. So luckily, one academic did answer our call, and we are currently redesigning her Moodle course in tandem with redesigning her teaching approach. So here's a screenshot of her Moodle as is. It is a beautiful example of how VLEs are almost never known for what they are: spaces. Online they may be, but they are spaces into which we send our students and where we ask them to be. So my academic knows exactly how she wants to be with her students physically, what she expects of them, to make content with each other, to self-select into research groups, to communicate, collaborate, connect, and create, and she knows exactly how to facilitate this in a physical classroom. And naturally, resources are essential to her course, so are reading lists. And if she didn't have the web, she would put all this essential information into a course guide, carry those guides into the room, the classroom, in a box, and allow the students to consult them whenever they need. But as you can see, online, that box is as big as the classroom itself, and it's loud and shouty. In week 2, we discuss migration policy, and it shouts this in week 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 also. Every time somebody goes into this classroom, that box shouts about week 2. It's uncomfortable, useless, and ugly. So here's a screenshot of her Moodle after I thought about it for a bit, and I mean for maybe 3 hours. I eliminated clutter, I arranged the space thematically, I put all the resources into one box and put a lid on it. I listened to Jennifer telling me her students need to communicate, collaborate, and make stuff. So there's a dedicated space in which the students can do that. The space reflects Jennifer's teaching approach. It is cleaner, easier to navigate, and visually more appealing because of it. And if any of you want to argue that, we can do that later outside, and I've got weapons with me. This is definitely more appealing. I'm just going to let that stand there. But much more importantly, why care? How and why has it become visually appealing? More importantly, considering what Moodle is, a learning technology, a suite of online teaching tools, why does it matter that it is also visually appealing? Why do we care about the aesthetic, the visual? Well, first, there are, of course, universal design principles. Easier navigation and visual clarity increases usability. Usability ensures accessibility. Clarity of design means that design elements aren't obtrusive. That means they recede into the background and allow users to focus on what really matters: their work, their learning. And the Japanese word for simplicity or elimination of clutter is kanso, something like that. And as a design principle, it is to remind us to think not in terms of decoration, but in terms of clarity, a kind of clarity that may be achieved through omission or exclusion of the non-essential. That was a quote. But these are, I would suggest, surface reasons for a focus on design. They are at heart pragmatic and utilitarian, which to my mind is reductive. This is not to say that these reasons aren't fundamentally important, but they are not exhaustive. Next step. So there are, of course, proper pedagogical arguments to be made, and we can bundle these up under the term of visual literacy. Visual literacy is necessary so that we may recognize the visual's rhetorical power, its ubiquitous presence, as I said earlier, and cultural social importance. The world is suffused with images. It has always been. This is not anything new. We are essentially visual creatures. But as Peter Felton points out, and I quote, living in an image-rich world does not mean students naturally possess sophisticated visual literacy skills, just as continually listening to an iPod does not teach a person to critically analyze or create music. Like any literacy, visual literacy is an intellectual, reflective ability that must be learned so that we and our students do not stand defenseless and uncritical against images that impart messages, ideas, ideologies, meaning. And I quote again, that composition studies, and indeed most academic disciplines, are only now beginning to take visual representation seriously reflects a failure of many academics to understand human learning, rather than a radical change sparked by technology and culture. To train students to see critically and to create in multiple modes should be an essential component of a liberal education. That gives away, I think, that Peter Felton is an American. Liberal education presumably is an arts and humanities education. The first step towards this is to recognize ourselves as visual creatures, to reinstate the visual properly vis-à-vis its counterpart, the textual. And yet, I suggest that even with these reasons, we remain in the realm of pragmatism and utilitarianism. And in any case, visual literacy does not explain why online learning spaces should be visually appealing. That is, it doesn't explain why we should care about the aesthetics of it. You still with me? Which means I'm now coming back to the notion of care, and I want to approach it via two further stepping stones, namely aesthetics and the visceral. So the aesthetic matters to us because the visual matters, because we are visual creatures. We are artful, we are creative, we are homo faber or homo faber. We care about art, design, beauty. This caring for the visual constitutes a particular way of being that we are. Now, some say we alone among the animals are aesthetic, but if we consider the satin bowerbird, that's that one, where is it? And his beautifully decorated structures, we might want to lay such reductive categorizations to rest also. Attracting mates, securing reproduction, are not the sole evolutionary drives all behavior can be reduced to. For if they were, then so would be this talk, because I'm behaving right now. Moreover, decorating their boughs is a learned skill, one that is possible for a little bowerbird to excel at, and through life, getting better at it. It is quite unlike the accidental plumage of a peacock, for example. The aesthetic speaks to us on the reflective level. We reflect on it, or we engage with it on that level. But the visual affects us also on a more primordial level, the visceral. Our natures are not merely composed of the intellect, but also of feelings, instinct, the body, the gut. Appealing designs make us feel good, and on this level, we can combine the utilitarian with the hedonistic. If well-designed spaces make our learners feel good, then we have a duty of care to design their learning spaces well, online and offline. Not only because it will measurably make them learn better, but because pleasure, happiness, feeling good are goods in and for themselves. And if you agree with me that this is a valid motivation for caring about the visual, then it is because you care at a fundamental level, by which I'm saying if you agree with me, you're a good person. So we care because as humans we operate in the realm of care. In Being and Time, Martin Heidegger explained that the being of humans reveals itself as care. And I quote, "The phenomenon of care in its totality is essentially something that cannot be torn asunder. So any attempts to trace it back to special acts or drives like willing and wishing or urge and addiction, or to construct it out of these, will be unsuccessful." You can read this up in Being and Time, page 238, or let me put it less carefully, but more accessibly, care is at the heart of what and who we are. This extends to the realm of education, of course, and this sort of appeal to remember, care, and love is not so very uncommon at all. In The Revenge of the Monsters of Education Technology, Audrey Waters reminds us that education technology requires our love and our care so as not to become even more monstrous, so that it can become marvelous instead. And Bell Hooks wrote that the heart of education as a practice of freedom is to promote growth. It's very much an act of love in that sense of love as something that promotes our spiritual and mental growth. The academy is not paradise, but learning is a place where paradise can be created. And here is a final segue, I will do this quickly, which might illustrate what I'm trying to get at. Paul Klee's Pedagogical Sketchbook, an odd text that explains the principles of art, design, form and function with sparse sketches and sparser text. An extraordinary little book, and I have no time to describe it here. I want to mention only why he created it. Klee became a teacher at Bauhaus, and as a teacher, he reflected on his own working methods and techniques. And he wrote, "When I came to be teacher, I had to account explicitly for what I had been used to doing unconsciously. Care in the face of the other means to be accountable to them. We care not because of extrinsic factors, not because it's written into our contracts or our job descriptions, and not because we are being held accountable by others. Paul Klee was not told by his employers to account for his methods. He came to be a teacher, which meant he became accountable to his students from within himself." That is what it means to take care. Paul Klee, very special artist that he was, did not display any special care that would be alien to any of us. I suggest that his response was really rather ordinary, which is why I feel no compunction in saying that in our practice, this is what we do too. We care. We know about connecting. We connect academics to each other, their students. We connect students to students. We know about collaboration, its usefulness to learning. We embrace creativity, both as a concept for students and as an approach in our practice, because fundamentally we care. If we don't act out of love, we don't really act meaningfully at all. This is no truer of a learning technologist than it is of a zookeeper, but it is no less true either. I'm done.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to invite questions. Is there anyone who'd like to start the ball rolling? Do you see anyone?
I'm happy if you don't.
Hi, Steve Lock-Wheaton, University of Warwick. It could seem like a big rat hole to go down looking at ever making your Moodle look better and better and better. You pick a new font, you change the colour of it slightly, change the background colour.
Yeah.
How far do you go? How far is pleasant enough?
I wouldn't go that far at all. This is something like I noticed when I was writing this that I wrote something very similar at all 2004. It's all about the spaces, and people don't seem to get the metaphor that is very simple. Here's a classroom, you know what to do, and here's a classroom, but it's online. You decide what it looks like. Don't spend a lot of time on it, but think, would you put a box in, or would you, every time that the students come to you and say, by the way, do you know what we're doing in week 2? It's week 7 already. Why is that's so the design principles are very simple. It doesn't have to be white, it doesn't have to be green or yellow, and those things change, and you can in fact pay people to do that for you. It has to be decluttered. I thought I kind of made that clear. But there is a sense of simplicity. Declutter it for a start. And Moodle does come out of the box with a lot of clutter attached to it. So that's something that, of course, the academics don't know. But I think a lot of the times that the teachers don't understand that we don't want a static website. What are you doing here? If you're just using it as a Dropbox, then use Dropbox, because that's, you don't have to worry about the design. Did I answer? I was trying to say, not very far at all. Yeah, that's my answer. Not very far at all into that rabbit hole.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Sheila and Alex. I just didn't give you the time to set up. And I presume your title is an allusion to David Bowie.
We'll get that. Yeah.
So you'll see the title in a minute, and I'll hand over. Thank you.
Who's behind it? Good morning, everyone. Let's just get set up. Okay. My name's Alex Beers, and I'm from the University of Liverpool. And this is
Oh, I was just going to hide.
the Vice Chair, Sheila McNeil.
Hello.
The reason we're here, and I just need to give you kind of a little bit of an explanation about this. But first I must mention Neil Withnell, who's made the decision to actually be in Malta instead of Coventry for reasons I can't quite grasp at the moment. I don't understand the logic behind it, do you?
No, and he didn't
anyway,
ask us either.
he didn't ask us, he just left us to it. So we're talking about kind of the changes, the changes that we have undergone in this open online course, which we'll get to. But I guess the reason why we've kind of used David Bowie as this kind of like motif for through this is because when we were submitting, there was the untimely death of that kind of great man, and he's someone who kind of actually has changed a lot. He has kind of transformed throughout his career, and that's something that is kind of intrinsic to what we've been doing of these past couple of days. So it's a little bit of a commemoration of that. Also, it ticks the box that Peter Bryant has got a YouTube playlist going on at the moment, so we can add tons of things to that playlist. So, and that's part of the play, which is another element of this conference. Okay, so just to give you a quick recap, this is all about the Bring Your Own Devices for Learning open course, which was developed 2 years ago by Sue Beckingham and last night's runner-up of the Alt Learning Technologies Prize, Chrissy Naranci. And what it is, it centres around a WordPress site which is open to everyone. It's participants from all around the world, students and staff, and it's based over a 5-day period where we're looking at a range of different themes, the 5 C's. There's been lots of talk about 3 C's and 4 C's. I'm going to give you 5 C's now. So the 5 C's are communicating, connecting, curating, what's the next one? Collaborating, and I've said creating. There's another one. Thank you very much. And that it takes place on a yearly basis, 5 days, and it tends to be in kind of the darkness of January. And so this is kind of a little bit of light to kind of like pick us all up. It exists in these different spaces. So we've got the WordPress site, we've got Twitter space, which has become the kind of the centre hub where all the heat actually happens. And we've also got kind of a Google Plus space where we connect and share. And it's all about kind of getting people to kind of come in and immerse themselves in those spaces and try them out firsthand. Okay, so I'm going to pass over.
Okay, yeah, so yes. We were actually thinking about making this a bit more interactive and seeing if you could guess our theme, but I think we've kind of given away that one. But following the theme of that's been started at the conference, just wanted to have a bit of audience participation at this point, and for those of you watching on the live stream, play along too. Could you stand up if you have taken part and Bring Your Own Device for Learning? Have we got anyone who's actually taken part? Don't be shy. Pardon? Yes, you can. Multitask, man, for goodness sake. Okay, so we've got a few people. Could you keep standing if you've done, if you've been involved for more than one of the iterations? Oh, you all have. You've done it more than once? You've... All right, so you're just kind of doing it all the time? Oh, well, I just mean like you've done it like 1 year and then come back the next year. So just for a bit, or have you just maybe been involved one? Don't right, okay. Okay. You keep standing if you've been involved all of the years and you've actually had something to do with running it. Okay, this was all just a ruse to embarrass Chrissy and Sue and David, and Chrissy's not here. So obviously there was a golden period when fantastic people like Sue and Chrissy developed this fantastic open collaborative model. You can sit down now, but you can keep standing if you want. Thank you very much. To participate and get people connected. And you know, we really felt that we were all standing on the shoulders of giants, but you know, there was a golden period and it was quite challenging for us to go forward in that. So in some ways, we could say that Alex, Neil and I maybe were absolute beginners in this kind of, wow, we're going to, when we offered to take over and run its facilities, we were like, oh my goodness. But actually, we'd all been involved in it from the beginning, and we actually had been involved in every iteration. And as well as being involved in all the kind of stuff that was happening online, each of us at our institutions had been involved in running face-to-face events that tied in with that as well. So we had looked at that for quite a while. So we weren't quite maybe as complete beginners at it, but it was still quite big shoes to fill in.
Yeah, exactly, and big shoes it was, because we were feeling the pressure. There was lots of pressure for a number of different reasons, because it had been very successful. Lots of people had participated in the course. But it was also, as I was saying, tended to be in January, and that's quite a kind of dark time. You know, you've just spent 2.5 weeks eating chocolate, watching lots of television, that type of thing. And then you're back into work, and it tended to always start on that first week back. And what we tended to do in our institutions was kind of badge live events in our institution to get people involved and introduce them to things like Twitter, obviously, Google Spaces, but also kind of the whole 5-day kind of like course. So we tended to be running around in our different institutions getting all these things done. So there was like an awful lot of pressure kind of going on. Added to that, we were running the sessions as well.
Sorry.
So you've got your 9 to 5, and then at night, each night for 5 days, you are online in the Twitter sphere, communicating, connecting, collaborating, curating with a whole bunch of people, which was immersive, exciting, draining, very hard to go to sleep afterwards, because when you put your head in that stream, it is enlivening. It's like kind of putting your fingers into kind of like a socket. So it's very kind of hard to chill out after that. So, and added to everything else that we've got going on in our lives. So there was a kind of a lot of pressure. And so just to kind of give you, for those that don't know about it, a little bit of information about what the course actually entailed. Here are the 5 C's that have been developed by Nancy and Beckenham, which I couldn't remember earlier on. Apologies for that. And let's just go through kind of like quickly the days.
Yeah. So just very quickly run through. So each of the 5 days takes one of the themes and people share what they've been doing. So we start with connecting. And that's a really useful way for people, if you've got people who are unsure about using Twitter or connecting. It's a really good way to get people to do that. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to quickly go through there. We have a blog post every day that kind of sets the scene. Again, we just went kind of with the tried and tested method. So that sets the scene. There's a Twitter chat at night and people, fantastic the amount of connecting that happens across, not just on the first day, but across the week. Then the next day is about communicating. Again, we have the blog post, we have the Google Plus space, and then we have the tweet chat at night. Day 3 was curating, always quite an interesting day 3, I think, because I think the way we curate things is changing all the time, and the value that we put on our resources, relating back to what Jane was saying this morning. It's a really good way to start talking about some of those more copyright issues and other things around information literacy. Collaborating, well, that's what we were all doing. The week is really about collaborating, but that's day 4 is very exciting. And then day 5 is kind of the end of the week. We try and get people to create something. And we've actually been creating a huge amount over the week, but there's always something really interesting that comes out on day 5, I think. Obviously, yeah, by this point, people are getting really comfortable with the tweet chats. They're like, okay, I'm going to be here for an hour. I need pizza, I need wine. So we get that on the tweet. So we get that kind of social interaction as well. So that's just kind of a whistle-stop tour of what happens each night. But, yes, this, yeah, I'll let Alex explain this one.
On the final night, it wasn't a black star, it was a blackout. Twitter went down. 20 minutes into our final kind of Twitter session, there was no communication at all. And we were all kind of scrabbling around, trying to find different platforms to find out what was actually going on. And Twitter hasn't went down for kind of a long period in time. You know, there was a period when it was going down all the time. But so yeah, so that was curtailed quite short, which I feel quite sad about, because that is the time people have eased into it. They are creating really interesting objects and artifacts and sharing, and they are at that stage where they're very comfortable working and communicating and sharing what they've got out of the whole experience.
Okay, so so the next steps. So the title of our abstract was about changes. And one of the comments we've got back from the reviewers, well, you're talking about changes, but it doesn't seem that you've actually changed very much. And in some ways, we didn't change an awful lot in terms of the actual structure. But, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, that kind of motto. So we kind of went along with that. But on reflection, there are some things that we would like to do, maybe to update some of the content, but to change some of the collaboration. The tweet chats, for example, we do a storify of them, but they're huge. I mean, there's thousands of tweets. So maybe we're thinking, could we get people to actually maybe do some more creation and maybe do some more personal stories and get people to actually storify their experience? Maybe something like that. But that's just some ideas we have. But again, more audience participation. what we'd like, if any of you have any ideas or you've been involved in Bring Your Own Device for Learning, or you're just hearing about it for the first time, if there's anything that you think that would be a good idea or you would like us to try, then just tweet it out with the BYOD4L hashtag. We'll collate that and let's just crowdsource a few ideas. Again, this is just to show the Twitter community, and we always have to do this because this is Martin Hoxie's fantastic Tags Explorer, which just gives you some of the insight of things that happened there. But yeah, so if you have any ideas, you can all be our little teenage ninja warrior people telling us what to do.
Hero turtles.
Hero turtles. Yes, I didn't get that one. And
I think that's it.
I think so. That's it. So it's been a fantastic experience. We didn't change much, but we are coming back. It will be back next January, the 16th to 20th of January. So put it in your diaries now. If you haven't been involved in it before, please do join in for 5 minutes for 5 days. It's a really, really good fun learning experience for everyone. And again, if you've got any ideas, if you'd like to be involved, then please just let Alex, Neil, myself know. And I have to say, it's been a fantastic collaborative experience for us, hasn't it? It's been great. So yes, I think that's about us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And questions, comments?
It's fine, you can tweet as well.
Yeah.
So this will be the 5th time that the... And how many people have you had join? I don't think you said.
It's kind of difficult to get a number, but we have more data on the actual number of tweets. So I think over the 5 days we got between 2,000 and 3,000 tweets collectively. So it's harder to pinpoint individuals because people interact in different ways. So and we have, you know, we've got some traffic stats from the blog site, but quite a lot of people seem to interact. Oh, David's got a question.
Actually, it's David from University of Warwick. I'm really one of those people that's got a comment, not a question. As someone who's been involved as someone running it and also as a participant, I'd say it's really, really worth getting involved. Whether you're actually key to it, really active on it, or just kind of on the sidelines. It is tiring doing all 5 days, but it is thoroughly worth it. So that's my 2 pennies worth.
Yeah, thank you. I think another thing, just one thing we probably didn't know, I think another C that it brings on, it can help people with confidence, you know, and it gives people a safe space to try things, particularly if you're working with staff that you maybe want to encourage them to do something a bit more with social media with their teaching. It's a really nice, safe, supportive space for them to dip in and out of, and as David said, they can just watch or they can actually start to interact. So and I think that does help with people's confidence, which is really, really important. You know, for all of us, we're fine, we all tweet, we're comfortable in those spaces, but a lot of our colleagues aren't.
Am I allowed to ask another question? Yeah. Institutionally, are you supported in doing this rather than taking it on as something as individuals because you're passionate?
Yeah, I think because you have the kind of the week-long events, so you badge a lot of CPD around that week, so you make sure that you are doing kind of face-to-face sessions, so introducing people to Twitter, getting people together to kind of work on the mobile devices, think about the different apps that get shared on a nightly basis. And so having that kind of through the week helps connect, and it helps that buy-in from the institution as well.
Yeah, I think Chrissy, she has a more kind of formal route into some of their CPD at MMU and accreditation through it. Very similar to Alex, we kind of use it more as an informal CPD opportunity. And it, again, just because it's that time of year, it's quite good. People maybe have a new phone or a new iPad, so it's quite good chance for them to kind of play with it in context. So yeah, it's a bit mixed, but yeah, we've had some quite good institutional support. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and let's do a round of applause again. And for the next speakers, we did have, we do have Nanaj and Singh, and it's erroneously listed as Sarah, who you'll find out is not Sarah, but Sultan. I'll let them do the introductions while they set up.
Great. Well, my name is Manoj, and this is Wadud. Sarah couldn't be here with us, but yes, Sarah and I, we kind of planned to give this presentation and share our experience. Well, we have kind of prepared this presentation in a way to match the theme, but it is more like a story and not a very pleasant story, I must say. And not necessarily a story with a happy ending, but I'll let you decide. Okay. So the theme or the overview of this short presentation is what happens when a technology is pulled without a pre-warning or just give you a short notice. It could be Turnitin, it could be lecture capture system, it could be your Moodle host or whatever it is, just gives you a year. Then how does it affect you, your team, and your institutions, and most importantly, your users? Now, we will also talk about a shared experience of loss of a multimedia or media server and how we all shared our experience, how we collaborated, and how we overcame the challenge. Actually, yeah, how we worked together to rapidly overcome the challenge. Well, not fully, but partially, at least we shared our knowledge and then we devised a path or a platform. From there, we took separate ways. And what have we learned so far? And that's really quite important. Now, formal introduction. My name is Manoj. I'm a learning technologist, particularly within the team or stream of policy and change at Queen Mary University of London. And
hi, my name is Wadud. I'm an e-learning officer at SOAS University of London, so I'm part of the BLE community.
Great. So we use Moodle, Mahara, Echo 360, Panopto, Turnitin, and many services, including Media Core. That was our media server. So BLE, Bloomsbury Learning Environment, they started using media server in 2010. And I remember Sarah presenting it at 2011 Alt, and that's where I saw what media server is and what it has done for them. It evolved, they worked closely, and it was a small company at that time, so they were very agile, they were very helpful. So Sarah worked with them to develop the product, integrate with Moodle, develop a Moodle plugin, and then provided reference. And based on that reference, and based on some other assessment we did, we chose to make it available for our medicine and dentistry students and staff. And then we released it to all our staff members and students in April 2015, And we also helped them to refine the product because at that time they didn't have that tight integration with Moodle. We wanted our users to have this seamless experience. They should think the media server is a part of Moodle. They don't need to leave Moodle to do anything. They can embed, add, upload, or share within different areas. So pretty much, we worked closely to develop the product. And we also helped them to come up with these sort of things like terms and conditions, that if people are using it for the first time, they should see terms and conditions and devise a policy and so on and so forth. So anyway, it was all going absolutely fine. So you see the timeline is April 2015, and summer 2015, that was August. Everything was nice. Here you can see that. And we were also very hopeful that we are going to add a video assignment, video quizzes, a student, and because we didn't release it to students, so a student engagement, and several other features are going to be released in the coming year in 2015-16, including Mahara integration. But instead of that, we received this email from Media Core. So you can just read the highlighted bit. So this is what they told us, and they said you got a year to find a replacement. We offered them, can we buy your plugin? Can we continue using it? You don't need to develop. It's a very straightforward thing. And the answers were no for every single question. So no, we will discontinue this. There's no choice. So what happens? I mean, these are 5 phases of grief, but we didn't have any time for these things. And very quickly we passed through each stage, and we thought that, you know what, we need to do something. We can't spend time on this. So what we did, I will let Wadud explain.
So it wasn't quite Avengers Assemble, but we did have a crisis meeting on the 7th of October. So we came together and we made a list of possible suppliers that we can change and migrate to. Originally we had 13 suppliers, including the likes of YouTube, And then we brought that down to about 5, including Cultura, Medial, Planet eStream, Panopto, and media sites. What we did was we created a spreadsheet, which I'll show you.
Yeah.
So here's a copy of the spreadsheet, and we looked at what the features that are key to our needs and how each of these suppliers meets it. And this kind of formed the basis of which ones would suit each institution best in terms of their specific needs. So it included things like mobile playback, Moodle, and Blackboard integration, what kind of media files that you can upload to it, roles, the hosting, and also the search facilities. So once the document was completed, we invited the 5 suppliers to come down and do a demo day. Each supplier had 90 minutes to kind of pitch their services to us, and then we were able to then go away and think about which supplier we wanted to take. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 2 pathways that we took. We're going to just explain this in more detail.
Thanks. So yeah, in this meeting we had around 25 or so people from various institutions, all the victims of MediaCore, we all gathered. And after this combined presentation and demo and going through the shared spreadsheet, we thought, okay, now we all have necessary knowledge. Now we know the timeline and we can go and choose our own path. From there on, we were pretty much on our own. We still we were there for each other to give guidance. So we're going to talk about what Queen Mary University of London did and what Bloomsbury Group, what they decided. So at QM, we love all these Prince2 and ITIL and our own customized project management process. And this is a very, I put this on purpose. So you see that there are each stages: PMO, pre-requirement, design, build, test, deploy, early. And for each one, we have to write report. And it is a very tedious process. So we followed, I'll come back to it. So this is the timeline. So we knew about it in September. So in December, we built a business case, functional specifications were finalized in February, budgets were allocated in March, tender process, May, starting the project. So we started that in May. And then in June, we thought that, we can't do it in-house, so we need a developer, a Moodle developer who's going to help us. 3rd week of August, finished migration. 4th week of August, we start replacing, and because within Moodles, we had 4,000 or so embeds. So you see, we were there on the deadline 31st of August. Actually, I need to go back and find out if it all went well or not. I have been away for a while. So that was our process, and it was not an easy task because we also wanted to replace the Moodle embeds. So we were almost hitting the deadline. So this is one approach, that you follow all the Prince2 process, you do a lot of documentation, you write a lot of report, and do the actual work in the end, which is not necessarily the best way to do. And there is another way you can do that.
So what the BLE community did was work closely with Panopto, with the exception of IOE, Institute of Education. They went with Medial. The rest of us, being Panopto customers, we thought the most logical solution would be to work with Panopto and see how they can migrate the existing content from MediaCore into Panopto. Obviously, was a customer of Echo 360, and they converted into a Panopto user also. So with Birkbeck, what they did, they worked with ULCC to develop scripts to automatically replace the MediaCore links into Panopto links. RVC, they hired students who created the embed codes, and so as what we did is we manually obtained the hyperlinks and the embed codes, and we replaced those in the existing Moodle instances. So most of the migration happened over the summer. It was fairly painfully free. So as we finished that about a few weeks ago, so all our embed codes are all updated. I contacted the relevant departments. They went into the Moodle sites and websites where those existing videos were, and they updated those without any kind of problems.
So you see the 2 ways. So we had to hire a procurement manager, we had to hire a project manager, we had to do a developer. We followed all this
process like a gateway, the one you saw, I mean, that was the short version, each has its own life details. And it's still like we're hitting the deadline, whereas they thought, you know what, we are using Panopto, we saw the demo, and we're going to go with that. And by March, some of them were ready to go live, and they hired students instead of looking for a developer who's going to run a script to replace the Moodle codes or something. So the conclusion, well, as the theme suggests, collaboration was a key, because we thought we are not in this alone. Like one of, I think, ex-prime minister said, we are in this together. But yeah, we had very different reasons for it. So yeah, that was very helpful. We all came together, we built this platform, we shared our experience, and yeah, impact. That's the worst part. Like, at least I know, and I can also speak for Sarah, that it kind of pushed us a year back. Like, my plan was to work a lot on learning analytics and then undertake some projects and do something on e-assessment. Couldn't do any of that. So that's personal. But it has a huge impact on the team as well, because the resources and timing were allocated to that project, replacing that. And yeah, procurement, now that's the final bit. Like, if anything like this happens to you, or if you have to do, it would be, well, our recommendation that, you know, as a learning technologist or involved in this field, you know what would be good for institution. Just don't get too much involved in report writing or doing, like, following all the process. You have to do some compliance bits, but to pay a lot of attention on the actual product, or there's a procurement process called competitive dialogue. Just shortlist 2 or 3 based on the minimum requirements and bring them to your institutions, spend a day, half a day, and grill them a lot. Because what we learned, we had a tender document of 150 pages. And trust me, when it came to presentation, when we were just shocked to see that, oh, it's a whole different thing. I mean, it seems like people, they hire lawyers or somebody else to fill the tender document. When you ask them, when you refer to it, they have no clue what we wrote. They say, oh, yes, somebody else may have done that. So these things happen. So yeah, just seeing it with your own eyes is the best thing. Spending half a day for shortlisting. 1 year seems a lot, it's not. And yeah, and then mainly the most difficult bit was user expectations. Like, we didn't let our users know until the last moment when we knew what we were going to do. And in this case, we ensured that all the things are done in the background, so that they don't need to re-upload the videos, they don't need to re-embed the videos within Moodle. We did everything in the background, but that was the most difficult bit, I would say. And for learning experience, I personally think that this failed project, in phase 1, has taught me a lot more than 5 successful would have taught me personally. And yeah, and time will tell, like, what happens. Yeah, how does it go? Maybe in a couple of years' time or a year time, we'll come back here and tell you more about the impact, more about the experience. And yeah, that's pretty much it from us. But I would like to hear from you about comments, criticism, or something else I missed here. Thanks.
Thank you. So a lot of good suggestions there. Is there anything else that you'd like to do differently? And also, 2 prongs to this. Do you think it'd be possible to do things differently? So obviously there's certain processes for institutions. Do you think you'd be able to do the things you want to do rather than follow a certain process?
Well, differently. Well, there are 2 things. One would be not do at all and find another job. I mean, that will be a lot easier. But joking aside, no, it was very painful. But joking aside, I think I would do pretty much what I mentioned. I'm not going to follow all the process, all the report writing, all the documentation, because usually most of the things, the moment you select something, it's shelved, and you have to restart the whole thing. And then because of that, we started the actual dialogue with the supplier in June, what we could have done in Feb or March. So that's the main thing. And if you have experience just seeing the product, analyzing, criticizing, and choosing, and just get on with that. And I always think, you know what, when it comes to a project, it's not the process, it's not the Prince2, it's the people who make it successful. If you have the right people, they can do it. Do you want to add something?
I think we were quite fortunate working in the Bloomsbury area with the other institutions. Working together, we were able to draw upon different experiences, share ideas, what kind of needs we had. If we were doing this by ourselves, I think maybe we wouldn't be able to pick up all the points and the kind of key features that we require. So I think that was very useful for us to see what other people were doing, especially in the bigger institutions that kind of look more towards the future rather than the immediate impact that it's going to have.
Okay, thank you.
David Hopkins from Warwick again. I think we all feel your pain here with what you've had to go through, and as a comment, what you've been able to achieve, it just goes to show that when the pressure's on, you can achieve a lot in a very short space of time. But the question is, how much of what was going on influenced your decision on where you went with your media server in the future, with your decision,
Well,
what you went with, and then the future of that?
Well, the deadline was the most important bet, although we didn't stick to it. Like we didn't, in this case, we have an existing service. It's running. We have to continue running it, keep on promoting. Then we have to find a replacement. Then we need to do the transition. It's all like going to happen in a year time. It seems a lot, but it was not. So the most important thing was that we need to make sure by 31st of August, we won't end up in a situation where we have nothing. So that was the topmost bet. Going forward, now we have some sort of contingency plan in place that if this happens, hopefully we won't take that long. And well, this is a critical service. We need to promote it. We want our users to be innovative, and we need to enhance learning experience. So we need to have media server. But yeah, going forward, we are better prepared. We know that this can happen to any of the services we are using. But I think still, if it happens, it's going to be equally painful. It's not because we have an experience, it's going to be easy. That won't be the case. A lot of unexpected things that they come along as a package. Do you want to add something?
I'm probably just going to mention about Panopta itself. Because we were heavily invested in Panopta as a lecture capture, it was useful for them to be providing the media services to us. So our staff and academics were already familiar with Panopta, so it wasn't kind of reinventing the wheel as such or retraining people, just showing them the new feature. There's an added button into the text editor. You can just do the direct upload from Moodle itself. There was nothing extra that they needed to learn, so it just made sense for us in that way.
Whereas in our case, it will be a whole different thing. Users were using a system that was totally different, and now they're going to be using a system that's completely like the process would be different, the embedding, the adding, although it has more features, including video assignments or something, which we couldn't do in the previous phase. But yeah, still it will be very different for them.
Okay, let's say thank you very much to our speakers.
Thank you.
And for our fifth and final talk, are you representing the team?
I am, yeah. I'll just find presentation.
So collaboration in the heart of the MOOC. And thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. I'm here with my team, the Healthy Learning and Media team. You can give a little wave over there. And going to talk a bit about a MOOC that we delivered last February. So what I talked about, referring back to the abstract, was I wanted to talk a bit about how we introduced into our process of development of the MOOC a sort of collaborative ethos. MOOCs aren't, they're not new anymore, there's lots of them around, and I think a lot of us have been involved in them. But we wanted to take our experiences really and see if we can practice what we preach a little bit. We also wanted to show a few examples of how learners collaborated on the MOOC as well, so very much within the themes of Alt-C. So I'll just start briefly by saying a little bit about how the Healthy Learning Media team works. We're based in the University of Nottingham's Health Sciences, so we deliver curriculum to nurses, midwives, physiotherapists, and I can raise your 5 C's to 6 C's because the NMC code has care, compassion, courage, competence, communication and commitment. And these are embedded throughout the nursing and midwifery curriculum. But we kind of operate within this sort of structure. So we have a local school-based curriculum. We develop all the curriculum, mostly flipped, and trying to make the Moodle look nice as well. So totally with you there on that. We have a big research wing, which Richard Windle, Heather Warrad, Mike Taylor work very hard on. And this is research around sort of from health informatics to education, in health, e-learning in health education, all sorts of stuff. Our community is the people we work with. So we work with groups to design e-learning materials, includes students, teachers, clinicians, service users, carers, NGOs, social enterprise, local authorities, families, parents, all sorts of people. They actually form part of our community, and they come in and help us design e-learning in a participatory way. And the fourth arm there is the open. So the stuff that we develop, the learning resources that's been developed by these participatory groups, is open, available freely for anybody to use as well. That's part of our ethos. So these are some of the e-learning resources we design. I wanted just to show you just a short video clip, if it's working, which gives you a bit of a flavour of the resources and how we design them. Just give it a minute to fire up. Oh dear. Is the internet down? Anyone? Technical? See if that works. Okay. Oh, there's no internet connection. Oh, okay. Maybe we could come back to that, or yeah. It's probably too difficult by the time I've set it up. Okay, well maybe I'll show it at the end then if it pops back. I don't know what's happened there. It's typical, isn't it, when things go wrong that you can't plan for? Okay. Sorry, that's slightly thrown me actually a little bit. Okay, I was going to show a bit of a video anyway of how these are put together. All of our e-learning resources have participation at the core of them. This is actually the methodology that's been developed within the Helm team over quite a number of years by some of my colleagues. And it's the finished product is a result of this quite detailed process, but it provides a very qualitative output. So just to summarise that, we have the Aspire framework. So the learning aim, a short and tightly defined learning aim for the e-learning object. We have storyboarding workshops. These are where we involve the collaborative sessions and the people in the communities that come together and actually develop the resources with us. We have population, which is thinking about the resource specification. So from the storyboarding workshop, it's actually, okay, we're going to take those storyboards and we're going to put them into something that actually you can design from. I think that's probably one of the most challenging aspects, is trying to get that short and that tight and that focused, and implementing the resource, which is what you're going to do with it, what tools you're going to use. I think there's a presentation later by some of my team called Gone in a Flash, just a little plug for it, but it's about, you know, what technologies actually are you going to use to make it an accessible thing. That's accessible in terms of disability access, but also in terms of who can actually view it and what technologies are available. And that's part of the release step. And evaluation, all of our e-learning resources have feedback forms attached. There's research some of the team have conducted on these as well. And the whole process is enveloped in a peer review, iterative quality process with pedagogy right at the heart of it. So this is actually a big collaborative approach in itself that goes into these finished resources that we make. So what we wanted to do is open up this methodology so that we could share it with people through our MOOC, the Designing E-Learning for Health MOOC. Has anyone heard of it or been on it? Great, yeah. It's running again in February the 13th if you're interested, so you can go and have a look for that. But it was the first MOOC in the University of Nottingham that was delivered by an entire team. So Helm is quite a big team. We've got a lot of work on, actually, but we have people from the apprentice in our team up to the professor in our team as well, actually working on this MOOC and delivering it as a collaborative venture. So I was going to talk a little bit about our journey on how we developed the MOOC. I wanted to show a little montage video as well, but I've got the feeling that's not going to be available. So technology conferences, aren't they great? They're bloody Wi-Fi. So this is a few shots of our team. We are actually, you know, we're quite a close team. This is a jumpers picture that keeps coming out at every single presentation we do now because it's a bit daft. We like to encourage the team to take part in staff development. We've got a lot of us here today because we value staff development, and our School of Health Sciences also values it. And part of doing this MOOC was actually to improve all of our practices in different areas. So I was going to show you behind the scenes that Camilla put together. It was a kind of montage with some music, so you can imagine it in your head. You know, a sort of Team America type montage. Our MOOC was designed by a group, and it was we worked very closely with the university staff, who I'm going to mention, which is are we back? Okay, should we go for the MOOC behind the scenes? Built it up now. It's not going to be as good, is it? So. No, it's not doing a lot. I'll leave it, I think, because it's sort of distracting. I wanted to mention Steve Stapleton, Sarah Spate and Sarah Stubbings from the University of Nottingham, who are part of the core MOOC team. And we very much, they were part of the team as well, as was, I think, Emily Conway from FutureLearn, who we work very closely with. So we would consider those part of our wider team. So we had 6 of us educating on each of the weeks. And I think everybody, apart from Heather today, is here. And we each took responsibility for our week's content. We used Google Docs as well to collaborate on the design, but not just the course design, but the communications, the promo video, which if you've done a MOOC, it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest, putting that together. All our filming scripts, everything. So we collaborated on all of those. And I think it's fair to say as well, there were some of us involved in writing the content and being the kind of face of the week, if you like. But other team members also got involved in facilitating the discussions. So they had training from people in the university. They had opportunities to upskill in that area. If they weren't comfortable being online in terms of discussions, we had weekly videos every week. So everybody was involved who wanted to be in filming or editing, developing the presentations and supporting development. We also had, which was slightly unique, I think, to some of the MOOCs, we had a project going on within the School of Health Sciences with academic staff called Virtual Exchange, and it involved the University of Nottingham and Birmingham City, and they were developing their own e-learning resource, their reusable learning objects at the time. So about a year ago last June, we thought, well, we'll film the storyboard workshop for the entire day, and we interviewed participants in that project as well. And they formed a kind of part of the story. So all of these people here were academics, clinicians, students. They're all involved in our project as well. And they actually were very much part of the course, and they took part in the discussion forums. And the students as well were involved. They actually got involved in the filmed workshops. They also got involved in being the subjects of the learning resource. So the resource was about the NMC professional competencies and how you behave yourself when you're on a bus, that sort of thing. So they took part in the filming of that, but they also took part in the peer review and evaluating the scripts and evaluating the e-learning resource. So this is some of us here. We had stuff built into the MOOC that helped, provide our collaborative ethos to the learners of the MOOC as well. So we had sort of these weekly things going on, weekly Q&As. All of us there waving. So within the MOOC itself, we had, as all MOOCs do, thousands of learners all over the world. But we wanted them to develop a specification for an e-learning resource, but using the kind of methods that we do face-to-face. So we had to build into the MOOC some collaborative type of features. So these are the sorts of things that, just off the top of our heads really, we popped in, inspired by other courses. I'd done the Edinburgh EDC MOOC a long time ago, and I think that was a really interesting way of running collaborative MOOCs, collaborative courses. So these are some of the things that we did. And it was providing a kind of safe space for people to feel comfortable and also to help them link up. So over the course of the weeks, we had a number of topics sprung out. So we wanted people to design a specification for an e-learning resource around a topic they're interested in. This is a list here of some of the ones that they started to emerge from the forums. So part of our job was to try and either match them up and encourage them to see if they wanted to develop a storyboard together, but online. So we did actually have self-organised groups start to collaborate, and I'm just going to pop, I haven't got much time, I'm just going to pop up a few quotes around the sorts of things they're interested in. So as you can see, they're absolutely wonderful with the topics they came up with, and they completely surpassed anything that we'd have thought of, because they are situated in the country or the locality where the people are. So we've got things like, you know, supporting refugees in Germany. I'll show you some of the storyboards that they created as well. So what we got them to do, they developed storyboards using, sometimes using different types of tools, the usual kind of things. There's some tools we hadn't heard of before as well. Some of them went off and created a storyboard with their friends and family or colleagues back where they were, and then they photographed them and stuck them on Padlet. We had, you know, you can scroll down here, but we had loads and loads of really, you know, well-researched, valuable e-learning specs coming out of this project. And here's just a few examples. So we've got leadership for health personnel in Cameroon, mosquito breeding around homes, which actually, having suffered a mosquito bite this week, which has made my foot swell up over the last 2 days, I can totally resonate with that. But also with Zika virus, it's a very serious issue in some countries. You know, people did them in different ways, really creative. So I think we were just blown away, really, weren't we, with the type of resources that was created. So a very quick reflection. I think the key to making it a collaborative MOOC and one that actually reflected our ethos was facilitation. Everyone in the team provided facilitation. We established a rota using Outlook and that kind of thing, and maintained it sort of day and night, really. We used the Yammer group as well. So if, for example, something came up in the discussion forum that I didn't know about, maybe Richard or James or somebody else knew about, we could just alert each other, say, can you go and answer that person's question, and kept them very much engaged. Everyone's had different styles as well, so we used the breadth of the team's experience. Some were very, very good on the technology, you know, some better on pedagogy, so it actually worked out very well. The whole experience was really good for team building as a big team. We've had 2 massive projects over the last year as well since then, and I think all of the skills that people have learned, not just working together, but the skills around the filming, etc., has really helped. It was also good for the academics involved. Some of them joined the course as well. They've actually now learned about MOOCs. They've learned about what you can do online differently. It's moving the school itself forward in terms of what it wants to do, you know, in terms of its own online distance learning. So I think as a joint approach as well, we had comments back from the team that the team were actually motivated and supported to collaborate. Everybody had quite a lot of freedom to put into their own weeks and their own content. And we even had a sort of Helm card game thing, virtual card game, which learners on the course could find out a bit more about us before the course started. So I think I want to end it on that, really. I'm just going to plug the February course, which we're going to be delivering again. But yeah, I'll see if I've got time for the video or not.
Yeah.
Shall I pop if it works? Yeah. Yeah. never mind. Maybe take some questions then, because it's lunchtime, isn't it, in a minute? It worked before the session, because I tested it, didn't I? Yeah. Oh, okay. Can't remember which one this is now, so volume's not on either, is it?
Yeah, it should be on there.
Oh, sorry. I think we'll forget it, to be honest, you know. Never mind. Okay, if anyone's got any questions, be happy to answer them, or a member of my team.
I always have to pop up and ask a question.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah.
Jenny. It's just, you've done the course once?
Just once, yeah.
Did you make any substantial changes, or before going into the second
Well, we're
round?
about to do that now, really. So we're going to wait till start session's finished. Then we'll convene as well with the university's team and kind of review the whole thing. So I don't know if you've got any comments on that, but it's nothing. We don't want to put too much changes into it, really. And I think the thing that worked really well was the real-time kind of interaction with the learners.
Thank you. Well, thank you very
Okay,
much,
thank
and
you.
especially given all the technical hurdles you've
Yeah.
had to face. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to all our speakers. Thank you everyone for coming, and bon appetit. It's lunchtime.
So some background on the big picture. So this peer marking activity was created for a company called Avado, and Avado is a skills-based education provider. And they partner with all kinds of organizations. And for this project, they partnered with Google. So it is a Squared Online was the course, and it is a 5-month course on digital marketing and leadership. So students get to walk away with digital marketing skills and leadership skills. It's a cohort-based course where all of the assessments are group work. It's based on social, collaborative, and problem-based learning. The cohorts are huge because I had come from higher education into this corporate space. So I was used to working with 25, 30 cohorts. And then here I am, make a peer marking activity for up to 500. I'm like, 500 people. To create something for 500 people is very different than creating something for 25. But it was a challenge that I gracefully and happily took on. So the Squared Online is delivered entirely online. And to date, we have approximately, this is an approximate number, and some of my colleagues in the audience might want to correct me on this, but approximately 3,000 students have completed this activity to date. So we've had a lot of student feedback to weed through and consider, and so on and so forth. So it's my instinct as an instructor to go, any questions before I move on? We're all good, and I like to get eye contact with people, but it's kind of hard when you're so far away. But okay, I'm going to keep moving on. Okay, so why do we try peer marking? Probably the same reasons you tried peer marking with your activities. We wanted to really foster those leadership skills that we were trying to encourage and develop in our students. We wanted to empower the learner. We wanted to incorporate learner feedback, really treat the learner as a partner, and make them feel like they were listened to and that we were actually trying some learner-centered design. There was also another impetus to try peer marking. Avado has a number of courses, and they partner with a number of organizations, and they had tried peer marking already to a limited degree of success. And we really were motivated to get it right because we really believe in it, and we really believe in that, in the idea of empowering the student and giving them a voice and creating leaders for the future. Sound familiar? Is that sort of, anybody else have the same kind of motivations for trying it? Leadership, fostering leadership skills. Yeah, I see a couple hands raising up. So when we looked at the activity that was created in the prototype, I'm going to go through an actual high-level outline of what the activity actually was and what the student journey was. But when we looked at the activity and we looked at the challenges of why maybe it wasn't working, three themes emerged. Fostering trust and engagement and motivation with peer marking seem to be the biggest challenges and the biggest hurdles to overcome. Self-trust. Can I trust that I, as a student, can offer anything meaningful to my other students? Okay, as a student, can I trust others to actually give me meaningful feedback? I was a student once doing my master's degree online, and I had a assistant professor who was only 1 year ahead of me. She had just taken the same course, the same master's degree that I had, and she was already hired as an assistant, and she was marking my papers. I was furious, like angry. I'm like, I came to this course, I paid good money. I want an expert to give me feedback. So I feel like, and here I am, I have to kind of convince people like me that this is an actual worthwhile activity, that you're actually going to learn something from it, and that you all have knowledge, you all have a lot of things to say, and you can help each other. Power of social learning, right? So trusting of others, trusting the actual learning. Is this really a meaningful activity, or are you guys just trying to cut costs? Trust me, it is not cheap to do peer marking properly. It is not cheap. It costs about the same, if I may be so bold from my experience. So it doesn't, to do it right, I think, it's not a cost-cutting feature. Okay, the last thing, motivation, engagement. How do I get students to actually want to do it? How do I get them excited about it? So those were the challenges that we had to overcome. So the prototype. I'm going to take you through the prototype, and then I'm going to take you through the iterations. I think that'll help you understand the big picture. Any questions before I move on? I can't stop doing that. I know you don't have mics, but I have to. We're all good? Okay. Okay, so the prototype, which I call limited success, it was built on Moodle using the discussion forum with the ratings feature implemented. It was a self-selected activity, so students got to pick their own assignments. We didn't give them assignments to mark, and it was a 1-to-1 ratio. So one assignment and one individual. So students only got feedback from one person. Some students didn't even get feedback because of this self-selection option. Some students didn't get feedback, and that was a real problem. We gave them a marking instrument to use, a 3-column rubric with 3 criteria. Very simple. We thought it would be a no-brainer. No problem. 3 columns, simple. Students can, there's no way they can have a problem with this. And then the written instructions, we also kept those really, really simple. Just simple, just written. Nothing too fancy. No other really crazy support. And the actual activity itself was formative, so there was no grade, and that's really important too, I think. So you can probably start to see why we were having motivation issues, why we were having some engagement issues, some trust issues. You can kind of start to put those pictures together for yourself. So, okay, we're going to fix those issues. We're going to foster trust, we're going to build motivation, and we're going to get these students super engaged. So some things were working with the original prototype, and that was the discussion forum and the ratings. And we really believed in that because it was simple, the students were used to the technology, they seemed to be able to negotiate it no problem. What we did change and what we did tweak though is we changed the ratio. Instead of 1-to-1, we changed it 5-to-1. So every individual paper got 5 pieces of different feedback. And that aligns with a lot of the research that we saw as well, that it takes 5 pieces of feedback to replicate an actual expert tutor mark. And we did find that that actually worked for us as well. So we just tweaked the discussion form a little bit. We tweaked the rubric a little bit. We kept the 3-column rubric, but we added more criteria. We made it a little bit more complex. And that came from student feedback. Students were saying, we can't really give the feedback that we want because that marking instrument is actually limiting us. So we evolved that as well. We strengthened the design, so we gave more signposting. We added video. We gave lots of samplings. We turned the actual project into a summative activity, so students were getting a grade. It really mattered. And I'm just going to give you a quick example of one of the videos that we created. Bear with me, this did work earlier, but it might not work. There should be sound.
I'm now going to introduce you to a new type of activity, peer marking. You've been building your capacity to give and receive feedback in various ways during modules 2, 3, and 4. And we've introduced peer marking to allow you to apply the critical leadership and reflective skills you've developed so far. We want you to be a key part in deciding which teams have delivered the most compelling work. Once they have been marked, we'll share everybody's project and their feedback so that you can see what others in your cohort have created and what they have to say about the work. There are a number of advantages to peer marking that will support your learning in this final module. By taking assessment out of the teacher's hands, it shifts evaluation from teacher-driven to a learner-driven model and provides students further learning opportunities. Peer assessment can lead to a deeper understanding of a topic by evaluating the work of others. By practicing peer assessment, you can discover other perspectives on a topic which can broaden your understanding. Participating in peer marking, you're in a better position to understand the grading criteria. You can then internalize this understanding and apply it to future work and to improve your own performance, which are great skills for future leaders. Each group leader will submit your assignment the same way you've been doing in all of your other projects. You'll then each individually be assigned a paper to mark and give it a rating out of 10. Each rating will be averaged out and then recorded as a final mark. In order to complete this activity, you'll need to familiarize yourself with the assessment criteria.
Okay, you get the idea, all right? So we added this video as support, which seemed to really, really work. Make sure I get my presentation up, which really seemed to help students along. So we strengthened the design, we added some videos, we added samples, we added more modeling, we turned it into a summative project. We also added incentives. So we actually picked the 3 most exceptional papers and the 3 pieces of exceptional feedback and rewarded them. We invited the recipients of the exceptional papers to actually present their paper in a live webinar. Then the students actually voted within that live webinar for their favorite paper, and the favorite paper got published on the Squared Online blog. So if you're a digital marketing student, that's huge motivation. That's really going to engage you. And we have been publishing papers every cohort. It's really a really encouraging sign. And I invite you all to go check out the blog and see some of the content. But I think the number one thing, if I only have 1 minute left or 2 minutes, 3 minutes left, that I really want to talk about, that I think led to the success of the first iteration of peer marking was expert presence and intervention. We didn't hire a marker, we hired a tutor to participate on the forums and to intervene whenever they saw that feedback was getting a bit thin, a bit light, not appropriate. So the students then could trust that the feedback they were giving was appropriate. The feedback they were receiving was also appropriate. Trust, motivation, incentives. We thought we nailed it. So we ran that for a couple of cohorts. So I guess about 500 students went through. And then we noticed some themes coming through in the feedback. These areas that are grayed out are areas that we just kept the same because we felt they were working. But in the second and last iteration, we decided to edit the rubric because we were getting feedback from students that simple rubric that we had created was too simple. It was still too simple. And I'm just going to show you, take you through. And this is the last thing I get to talk about. I just want to show you the before and after. So you can see the before rubric. It's ugly, isn't it? Like it's white, it's got like 3 columns, there's 5 criteria. It's all qualitative criteria, so that's good. So I'm quite happy with the design. But it didn't look like the rubrics that students were used to using as an actual student, that the tutors actually used to mark their papers. So we redesigned it. We redesigned the rubric to look more like what they were used to. We increased the columns to a 6-column rubric. We added about 4 more criteria. We made the whole paper out of 60 marks instead of out of 10. So this really actually looks like the stuff they've already been using throughout the course. So we found that has been really, really well received. So students they could trust that we actually trusted their knowledge and their ability to synthesize all this information. So without further ado, I think I've got maybe 1 minute, so I'm gonna just sneak ahead. We're not gonna get a chance to talk, oh, it's not loading up. I'm just gonna sneak ahead and just kind of sum up what I think I'm gonna skip about that, skip that, skip that. You can take a look at the exemplar paper that one of the very first ones that got published on the blog. You can go take a look at that, it'll be on the site. But if I'm gonna leave you with any top tips and tricks, because that's what I promised with this talk, is that really, really focus on reducing the cognitive load by implementing simple, intuitive tech and marking instruments that students are already familiar with. Try to foster trust by providing tutor guidance. We found that worked really well. Use incentives to motivate and engage, and experiment, analyze, and iterate. So with all of that, there's the emergent model. What I couldn't find in the research, and why I think there might be an emergent model, is I couldn't find anything explicit on the value of experimentation in any of the literature. If anybody here in the room has, I would love to know. But that is why I think there might be a potential for an emergent model, because for us, without experimentation, we wouldn't have had the success that we did have. Okay, those are the references if you're curious. I did it, 15, right? Yes. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's a microphone that's going to run around.
Okay.
For anyone with
I guess
questions.
I can stick around here then.
Yeah.
I got 5 more minutes up here. Okay, I just have to wait for the questions. Oh, we have to wait for the mic.
Yes.
All right, because we're recording this. All right.
Hiya.
Hi.
I've got two questions.
Okay.
My first one is be really interested to hear how you involved students in the iterations, like how you involved getting their feedback, and how you involved them in the process of iterating. And then the other question was, I would really like to hear a little bit more about why you think. Do you think it was a presentation thing around the reason they wanted it to be a more complex rubric? Was it familiarity, or do they genuinely want more guidance on that?
Okay, those are two. Okay, the first question. Okay, so I'm going to answer the second question first because that's the one I remember. I might have to get you to repeat the first one. I think that we didn't. It's hard to know whether it was the actual production value. You're right. I'm guessing. I'm just making an interpretation. That's my reading of the situation, because we didn't actually test a black and white rubric with 6 criteria and changing just the content. We didn't test that. So now that we've gone 2 steps ahead, it's kind of hard to go back and give students something. But I don't, you know what, you're right, I don't know. It could just, because there's been lots of sessions talking about that sort of, when we're creating and constructing these learning environments for students, what is it? Is it just, how much is it the environment and how much is it the actual design? And sorry, your first question?
first one was about how you involved them, how you involve students in iteration.
Okay, so after every module, we have a I think it's about a 30-question survey where we ask students like what is their opinion, what was valuable, most valuable. There's a lot of like Likert scale stuff. There's opportunities for quantitative and qualitative feedback. So we gather all this feedback at the end of every module, and we ask a specific question about the peer marking activity. So we do that, and then we look at the actual activity ourselves. And for some of our bespoke, some of our corporate clients that we do specialized versions of, we have different KPIs and different ways of measuring, and that's sort of, so a little bit quant and qual. Does that answer? Okay. Yeah, oh, sorry. I have to wait. Okay, who's excited to try more peer marking now? Anyone? Did that help while we're waiting? Okay, see, post-assessment, Gagnet's 9th step, or no, 8th. Thanks. Okay.
You said something about building trust in the forums by somebody monitoring the discussions in there, and I didn't quite catch who was doing that.
Oh, sorry, I probably was starting to talk really fast because I saw the minutes kind of increasing. We hired an expert speaker. So we have tutors that mark the papers. So instead of marking the papers, we hired someone to participate on the forums and just to like live on the forums, breathe on the forums, and intervene and read all of the posts and to guide feedback and to prod along. So,
and the discussion forum was part of the peer marking.
Sorry, yeah. So the peer
because
marking,
you've got the criteria grid, which is separate to that, isn't it?
Yeah, so that we set up the discussion forum so that within the discussion prompt, we had the rubric and the marking instrument, and we had the ratings. We have an option on Moodle to select ratings. So students would, we had lots of signposting. I don't know if I have time to show you what that looks like, but we had lots of signposting instructions to guide the markers on how to complete the activity, but it was all done within a discussion forum. It wasn't done, we could have used Workshop, we tested it, but it just was too much for and we just didn't find that it had the functionality that we wanted. And I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did, but I think it's quite interesting because when I was someone who participated at master's level in this type of activity, I did find it very frustrating for the feedback that was coming back because it wasn't true, basically.
Oh, okay. And you had no one intervening?
No, because it wasn't a discussion-based activity.
Oh,
it was just the use of a criteria grid and written feedback.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Aropa's here, but Aropa has an amazing tool, but I found that is so, you need to be able to have some forum for discussion so that students can ask questions and that you can actually intervene and ask those questions.
Because
why did you give me that? Yeah, why?
Otherwise, how do you know that the correct thing is going on, really?
Yeah.
But then that might contradict why some people might want to use peer marking as well as a way of not having to do so much because it's too much to mark. But there's still then that involvement then, isn't there, of you're still overseeing something in quite a detailed way.
Yeah, and for us, because one of our methodologies is social and collaborative learning, it just tied in. We had to have that element of social collaboration, and we had to open a forum for conversation. And one step that I didn't actually share with you was that at the very end, after all the papers were marked, we opened up all of the forums so that every student can go in and see how others marked and see what other grades were given. So it was completely transparent, as well as being 100% social. So people could kind of go, oh, who got a 9? Oh, wow, you got a 9, wow. And you could comment and we keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Because I know, I was like you, I was so frustrated. Like, who is this young thing marking my paper? What does she know? She has no life experience, blah, blah, blah. I remember being really angry when I was a student. Now, of course, I'm in love with it, and look at how tides have turned. But I think I can empathize. Yeah. You're kicking me off now.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut the question short. If you can catch, will you be around later?
I'll be around, yeah. So thanks so much, everyone, for your time and attention. Super appreciated.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to invite Sarah to come up and give our second presentation. And Sarah, you're from Warwick.
I am.
You haven't had to travel too far.
I've come just a few meters along. Let me find my slides.
Thank you.
just show you one thing first, if I could. You know, it's a short session, and it's hard to kind of look at a marking rubric and other things and watch and listen all at the same time. So I've created a Mahara page, and it's open to you via a short bit.ly link. So that's on the first slide. So my materials are all on here, including the marking rubric there on the right hand side, so just sort of scroll through there. So that gives you a bit more detail about the work that I've done and how I've done it and the rationale and a kind of critique of it, and also things that I've read and referenced. So you can access that, and I'll leave the first slide on just long enough for you to get that bit.ly link. So there we go. So very clever of Alt to put Marnie and I together, because actually we're talking about some similar things, slightly different. Mine is very small scale actually, so mine is about work with a very small group of students, 8 students. And you were also talking about, I was very interested in the fact that your rubric became more complicated, had more bits added. Well, we were at the point where we thought ours was very complicated and needed to be reduced. So we're kind of coming at it from the opposite point there. So this is a sort of work in progress. I'm not calling this a finished product, but it is a product that the students produced with me together to aid them to peer mark and self-assess their own work for a short postgraduate award. This is kind of Alt C part 2 for me. So I went to Manchester last year, and last year I talked about the course which through which this was a part. So I ran a course called Transforming Technologies last year, which was a 20-credit postgraduate award here at Warwick, and the award was a 10-week short course all about the use of technology in teaching and learning. And as part of that course, I wanted the people coming to the course to kind of really get under the skin of technology and curriculum, to really understand it, but also to have an agency in the curriculum we had. So it's not about my curriculum imposed on you. I want you to have a say in this curriculum. We're all experts, sort of tying into notions of student as producer and student having agency in curriculum and their resources. These are all teachers, so teachers know what teachers know, and I wanted them to be able to contribute as well. And one of the ways in which I wanted them to contribute, which I thought was novel, was that we could do a novel piece of assessment, which was a digital poster, which counted for 20% of their final mark, and that the students with me would kind of co-author their mark scheme for that digital poster. So I'll tell you more about that in a little while. So it's sort of looking at the sort of meta curriculum, if you like, as well. I've just got a question to pose to you, actually. I'm calling it warm-up question, but it's very hard in a lecture theatre like this to be interactive, and we're time limited. So I just wondered how, thinking about your experience at Alt, you may have been here for 3 days or maybe just 1, but how would you assess your own engagement at Alt C over the last 3 days? And I've come up with a little rubric here, a system of assessment. So, you know, you might be a passive observer, you might be an active observer, you might be a passive participant or an active participant. They're my very crudely flung together 4 ways of measuring your success at Alt. And you can see that from the top is the person who's kind of turned up, made no notes, might have had a bit of lunch, not made a contribution, right through to the person who has been tweeting like mad, probably consumed the most wine at the conference dinner, has engaged with all the play stuff. You know, they've used social media, they've been engaged in sessions, they've asked questions, they've contributed, they've made a presentation, they've had the full fat Alt experience. So I don't know, you know, in that rubric, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but you might want to consider where you think you sit in my rather crude assessment rubric. But my second question to you was, if we were assessing ourselves at Alt and our participation and our engagement at Alt, would you want to be responsible for writing that assessment criteria? You know, how many of you would be interested in putting that together and bringing it together? Because one of my questions is, how far are students interested in this? And you know, that business of trusting yourself as an expert as well as trusting your teacher. I think, you know, the things that Marnie said really rang true here as well. So have a think about whether we are enhancing the student experience by getting them engaged in this way. I love e-portfolios. I'm a real e-portfolio sado. We use Mahara e-portfolio here. We call it My Portfolio. And I've had great success with it here. Not, no personal success, but my students have used it really well. So currently I work with postgraduate students who teach here at the university, but I've worked with a whole range of teachers from the HE and FE sector. And I've seen not just that an e-portfolio is a brilliant place for putting your stuff, but it's also a great place for seeing the transformation of learning. That's the thing that really gets me excited. I've been able to see how students, through reflective practice in an e-portfolio, have changed, have moved on in their identity, they've shifted. That's what learning's about to me. And an e-portfolio, I think, has got the potential to capture some of that. What we tend to do in higher education is spend a lot of our time assessing and thinking about the cognitive domain. So you'll recognise this is Bloom, and we spend a lot of time considering academic norms, knowledge, analysis, synthesis, etc. That's very HE. I don't think very much of what we do in assessment in HE works in these other domains, actually. So we don't think about the emotional side, the affective side of learning, and that's what I mean by kind of transformation of thinking, change, identity, attitude. I'm not sure how much of that we capture. It might be a byproduct of studying at a university, but how much do we capture and potentially try and measure? And then the other side is this physical side. I'm calling it physical, but it's about the kind of making something, curation, craft, digital literacies, publication, management. Publication tends to be in the domain of people who have already graduated and are doing a PhD or are lecturers here, but do we give our undergrads the opportunity or our master's students the opportunity to publish, to be publishers? So these are all themes that I'm interested in, and it's that physical domain that I want to explore today, thinking about my project. So the project was, as part of the Transforming Technologies Postgraduate Award, to co-create with my students and test and carry out an assessment matrix or rubric for marking an e-portfolio. And actually, more specifically, the student's assessment task, was to create a digital poster on a technology. And the idea was that they would create this digital poster in Mahara. They would anonymously peer mark that. I would give feedback as well. And then we'd compare how we'd use the assessment rubric. First of all, of course, we had to write it. So that was my objective. And it was part, like I say, of giving the students more agency in course design, a sense that they belonged, and to see if that actually improved grades and participation. So some of these themes are things I'm interested in: alternative assessment methods, this idea of student as producer, curriculum as a process as well, not just an end product. Again, HE is quite obsessed with the end exam, the certificate, the 2-1, the whatever else. But what about how you do along the way? What about understanding the process? Other people are talking about this sort of thing, so I've just picked out here GISC and the HEA as two people who have growing bodies of work and interest in this area. I like this notion in the HEA quote there of assessment literacy. My background, 20 years ago, I began as an adult literacy teacher, so the term literacy is very important to me. And we heard this morning about copyright literacy, and we're talking about digital literacy. So multiple literacies is something I'm interested in. And assessment literacy, and integrating assessment literacy into course design, I think is very powerful. This notion that I think students sometimes don't always appreciate what they're being assessed on. I have come across students over the years who've gone, oh, is that what the assessment criteria is? It's never been made explicit to them. So one of my questions was, if it's made explicit, not just explicit, but actually if you help to write it, does that improve your performance or help your understanding even further? So we'll see. So students created a digital poster in my portfolio. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of those. And it was going to be part of, and is going to be part of, a repository we have here at Warwick called TAP, Technologies for Academic Practice. And it's actually a staff repository currently. Staff have created pages about technologies which they've used and found interesting. So these will be the first student contributions to TAP. As part of the assessment, the students designed, tested and evaluated their experience of writing this. Created their poster and then marked somebody else's. So thinking about how I integrated that into course design then, because of course this was a chunk of work that needed doing, and we were time constrained. It was only a 10-week course. So if you have a little look at the diagram there, on the left-hand side are the themes for each of the weeks of the course. So we began with the digital self, curriculum design. The things that are in green represent distance study work, and the rest of it was face-to-face sessions, 3 hours a week, for 10 weeks, more or less. And it was at these points, sessions 1, 5, 7 and 10, that we worked on this in fits and starts. So I introduced the concept to begin with, and then at session 5, the students looked at tap pages that already existed and decided what made a good digital poster, and from them we started to come up with what we needed for our assessment matrix. So where do digital skills sit? Well, it's an interesting one because HE, as I said before, traditionally assesses knowledge and understanding, analysis, critique, and academic and communication kind of conventions. Where do digital skills go? Are they a subsection of that last area, or do they sit on their own? In the end, we decided that digital skills needed their own column. So we had a 4-column matrix. Digital skills was the extra one, if you like. But in addition to that, we threaded digital skills throughout the other 3. So digital skills appear in knowledge and understanding. They appear in analysis and critique. And I'm going to give you just a couple of examples from the matrix because, again, looking at it's quite time-consuming here, but you'll be able to see the full thing later. So in terms of knowledge, you can see there that this is what I've picked out as the difference in terms of distinction, merit, pass and refer, which are the Warwick postgraduate scale at postgraduate level. It'll be familiar to you. And you can see the differences there from sort of limited command of a tool to solid understanding of a tool, including the software or platform. In terms of presentation skills, these were some of the things that we might expect. So that for refer, digital content might be limited to just text and hyperlinks, but at distinction level, it might be about all kinds of things, multimedia, RSS feeds, infographics, embedded polls, that kind of thing. So you can see the difference in complexity or skill in there. And then if you think about that last column, these are some of the things that we assessed in terms of digital skills. Authentic versus appropriated materials. So did students make their own screencasts and include them in that page, for example? Did they connect their artifacts well? Did they think about the reader in terms of accessibility, scrolling, linking things? How current were their ideas? Had they thought about copyright? Had they thought about interoperability? So there's an example of a student poster. The student looked at the tool I Know It. And another example of a student poster, they looked at social media, they looked at Facebook, thank you, in particular. Because these are assessed pieces of work, you can't actually get to these beyond today, but the screenshot gives you an idea. So let's think about the peer marking exercise then. So the students were given an anonymous piece of marking. They marked anonymously. They used the matrix, the rubric, and so did I. So the students marked first and sent me their feedback, and I added my feedback to it. So there was my feedback and the students' feedback together. And this little strange-looking, colourful blob on the screen is all about how our marking tallied, basically. So wherever you see a blue squiggly line and a yellow blob in the middle, that's where me and the student agreed on the marking. And for this one, that was about 75% agreement. So I asked students to highlight on the actual grid itself, on the marking criteria, and it was quite detailed, as you can see. I asked them to highlight where they felt that particular digital poster had met those particular things. So it's an interesting exercise. And like I say, that one was at about 75% agreement. So we included this, but we included that qualitative feedback as well. Feedback from the students on this exercise then was actually generally very positive. So students, valued the digital skills, but they also quite liked the process. Somebody says here, marking someone else's poster makes you really look properly at the marking criteria. It brings it to life. And other people valued the fact that as a piece of work, this wasn't just going to be an assignment that kind of got shredded or put in the cupboard. It was actually on a website that could be shared with others as well in a sort of repository of expertise. So just concluding really, these I think are the successes and issues of this small piece of work. And that is that students digital skills were enhanced by this exercise. They learned new things. They'd never used My Portfolio before. They'd not embedded a YouTube clip into a page and that sort of thing. So there were very practical things that they learned. Students generally, their awareness was raised of the assessment process. But on the other side, it's extremely time consuming. I think Marnie gave some examples of a bigger project and how long it takes, the iterations that it takes to get this right. And for my students, I was with them for 10 weeks, so within a 10-week period, we had to do what we could do. And it could be developed, I think, further in the future. This issue of ownership of assessment criteria is interesting. I'm not convinced the students fully owned it, even though they had helped to write it. So that's something to consider as well. And then my final query was about the digital skills and grades related to that, and that students generally did better, I think, because we'd included the digital skills column. I think if I took that away, those students that had got a merit would probably have been left with a pass instead. So I've put that in both success and issues. Do we assess digital skills alongside others in higher education? Can they equate? Can we find a way of making them match? So these are my critical questions, not for answering necessarily now, but how far do students want to be producers? How far do they, and how do we prepare them to be equal partners in curriculum design? Does writing your own assessment criteria make you use it more effectively? I do have one example of a student who said, I really liked using that assessment criteria to mark my peers' work. Wish I'd used it when I was designing my own poster. I thought, yes, I wish you'd used it. So there's a bit of a mismatch there, a disconnect there. And then finally, can we equate and account for digital literacy skills alongside traditional academic criteria in higher education? They're my details. You'll be able to get to that page via the bit.ly link and learn a bit more. And there are 20 copies of the rubric down here for the first 20 lucky people who'd like to take them away today. Otherwise, you can find it online. Thank you very much.
And if you'll stay up to see if there are any questions while the microphone runs around. Where's our microphone?
Oh, you barely see.
There is a question down here.
I do feel a bit starstruck up here, actually. I have to say, seeing my stuff on a massive screen. The last time I was here, Eddie Izzard was on the stage. Hi.
Hi, I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
I particularly like this idea of including the recognition for the digital element.
Yeah.
And my question is, your colleagues in the team, the course team, what did they feel about that? About recognising this things that is not the cognitive element? Because I tried to do something and that didn't go down very well for me.
No, well, I've done it in a sort of small cave where nobody will find me and nobody will find. So I'm being flippant. But my immediate colleagues, I mean, we're academic development and we're technology development. So actually, generally, it's been quite well received within that circle. In terms of broadening it out into the wider academic community at Warwick, I'm not sure. I mean, it's actually the rubric that we came up with is based on the Warwick postgraduate rubric, so it's building on that. It's not actually stripping it away completely. I mean, you can't kind of, for all kinds of reasons, course regulation reasons, just say, I'll just do my own assessment criteria. But I suspect if I were to try and introduce this, roll it out further, it would be a bit of a slow burner. But doesn't mean it isn't worth trying. I would love other people to test it, actually. It would be great. So, I mean, feel free. Anybody who sees it, would like to use it, critique it, that's absolutely fine. It's an open tool. Thank you.
Working in communication studies.
Yeah.
So not in an educational role at the time, but I'm now doing educational development. I'd be very interested to test it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Let's be in touch then. Thank you.
Any others?
No, it's all right. So the video screen won't pick it up. Sorry.
I can just about see you up there in the stratosphere.
Hi, Justice Davis, University of Derby. The digital literacies thing has sort of raised its head around a new program that I just validated. One of the things we struggled with is that you've got your indicative content, your learning outcomes for the module, and then your assessments. And if you put digital literacies into the assessment, you've now got a problem sometimes justifying it because your learning outcomes have to link to the overall kind of assessment framework and learning outcomes that the professional bodies are going to be accrediting you for. So how have you found doing that for this program? Is that a problem in this program? Or are you just, for example, are you marking digital literacies because you feel like they're important but they're not in the module spec?
They are, I mean, in terms of the weight of the course, it's very small. It's not really as part of my, I mean, it's a 20 credit postgraduate award, so it's very, very small and not part of a bigger, wider module. So from that point of view, I had a bit more freedom. And, you know, at the point of, you know, like all universities, we have a kind of course approval process here. And so at the point of doing that, you know, but it actually, to me, it was integral to the course itself. The course was about using technology for teaching and learning, and that to me includes assessment. So it was a sort of integral to the meta curriculum, if you like. So it was small scale, and I think that's what made it manageable and something I could do now. To implement it more widely and more broadly, I think would meet with questions later on.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in, getting it into engineering subjects.
Okay, yeah.
And it's very difficult to get some of these things in because you've got to then fit it in around everything else.
Yeah.
Then what I found is when you work with students and you say, okay, we're going to do something on digital literacies, and they're like, well, it's not in the module spec.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And so why are we doing that?
I mean, we have to then question, don't we, module specification, I think, and, you know, there's quite an appetite here at Warwick for looking at digital literacies. We have quite a strong digital humanities group, for example, and you know, there's quite an appetite for it. I think it might take a few of us coming together to kind of propose a very sound rationale for this and think about at module design level and module approval level, you know, how we kind of pitch that to people who make decisions about what can be allowed and what can't.
So yeah, I mean, you can do that at university level, but then you have the problem with the professional bodies. So if you want accreditation, you've got to get them to agree.
Yes, I will. That's right.
And if you don't have accreditation in an engineering degree, you might as well not do the degree.
Yeah, yeah. I think in my case, small course and it didn't apply, but you're right. I think that raises a really important point.
Okay, I think we'll have to end the questions there, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to our next presentation, which is Amber Thomas, and Robert is somewhere around. He is somewhere. Robert O'Toole from Warwick.
Okay. It's particularly useful following on from Sarah there, because we're going to talk a bit about some of the thinking that we've been doing about designing the platforms behind the learning, which is happening in parallel with the thinking about how we design the learning. So it's a bit about our story there.
I'm just going to move some props into position while you're talking.
He is. I will ignore him. You can ignore him too. So this is our story about implementing a more joined up approach. And to just head back in time for a minute, about 4 years ago, we were just introducing Mahara, and believe it or not, we were just introducing a VLE for the first time. So it was a point at Warwick where people were a bit unsure about what are the core tools, which ones of these are pilots, is this definitely here to stay, can I rely on this? And there was a need for greater clarity. So we were discussing that we had these needs amongst the academic body and our fellow professional services as well, to be clearer about what it was that was available and what was core and supported tools. So we'd had various discussions, and we knew that we needed to describe things better in terms of what the borders between different tools were, about what they did, and about what the benefits of them were. But we also knew that in order to do that, it couldn't be just my team. We sit aside IT services. We knew it couldn't just be that. We had to work with colleagues from Learning Development Centre, colleagues from the library, colleagues from various different parts of the university, and most importantly, with the academic departments and with learning technologists in academic departments. So we knew that we needed a sort of framework for thinking about how we lay out those tools and how we deliver those tools. And we knew that what we'd got then wasn't static. So we needed to think about how these things would change and progress and think about innovation. And at that point, I'm going to go back to there so you can press that one. So one of the things that Rob and I had been discussing and we've been talking about within the team is that essentially Warwick is very much mostly
blended learning. And our approach was to try to go from classroom-based teaching to more of a blended aspect. And so we knew that it was something to do with thinking through how people used tools both face-to-face in the classroom and online. And over to you, Rob.
Over to me, okay, so, next slide. So at the same time, for a few years running up to that, I've been doing a PhD looking at design thinking, design methodologies, organisational designerly approaches, and how they might work or not work, how they might be synergies with how things actually happen in higher education, specifically the University of Warwick, which is, I think when I started doing that PhD, the first thing I realised was just how immensely complex this environment is, and how complex the design innovation and the spread of innovation ideas and enhancement ideas is in this environment. So I've got a slide here that just gives a summary of what we think design, or I think, out of my PhD, design thinking means and how it fits into education. And one of the big messages, which really fits really nicely with the experience we had in academic technology, is don't just address isolated problems. Okay, so we have lots of isolated problems, lots of reactive stuff all over the place, and it's a very rich, complex world. And us being academic technology and IT services, we're running around for many years addressing these lots of isolated problems in a not particularly joined up way. So find solutions and build enduring design capability together. Rather than just focusing upon solving problems, we actually wanted to build, and we are building, more robust, more university-wide design capability. So people, collaborations across the university can get together and prioritise, work out what the challenges are, what the ambitions are, and join together to create solutions together. And that design thinking, that design capability that we're trying to encourage across the whole university is a continual process. It's not a one-off. It's not something that just starts up for a specific project to meet a specific challenge and then disappears. We want it to be there all the time. And design thinking, if you come across that term, so there's plenty of literature on it. Looking at some of the literature, you might think design thinking is a method for doing design projects. It's not. It's much bigger than that. It's a continual organisation-wide process of finding and creating designs that, and this is straight from my PhD, practices, behaviours, designs, using technology or not, that fit, stick, spread and grow. So they fit with people's needs, their capabilities, where they want to be, their ideas, their culture, their value. Okay, that's really important. They stick for a reasonable length of time to justify the effort that goes into creating them. They spread, and the wider and the greater the spread we can achieve for the effort that we put in an organisation like this, a complex organisation, the better. And they feed back into the design capability. So the practices that are adopted help people to go on further reflecting, finding design ideas, refining design challenges, finding solutions and working together, and help to create the community of design capability that we're trying to create. So, and we're using a wide variety of design innovation methods. We've got one of them curled up there. Happily, we'll see if we can uncurl it in a minute, and hopefully it won't spring back. And rolled. Now I'm going to whiz through the design the innovation and enhancement management model that underpins this. Okay, so this is typically what we see happening in the university in a very unconnected way. So we have people, let's get this pointed the right way. Okay, and people maybe, they have a practice that they're continuing, that they've adopted, often just because that's what has always happened. Oh dear, sorry about that. Back one.
of the strategies used in achieving the learning outcomes. During the improving stage, the learner considers the experience and decides how they will alter the way they learn in the future. So onto the focus of the study. The study focuses on how students develop skills and confidence to learn autonomously. It tries to bring together existing practices and approaches with the intention of providing students with opportunities to develop skills. The study uses learning design principles, as I said before, mind mapping technology, and the apprenticeship model to teaching. So looking at traditional learning design, it looks at how teachers create learning activities for students and how teachers share those activities among their community. The change with what I'm doing is that I'm looking at how students design their learning. So in the traditional approach to learning design, the power of the learning design sits with the teacher. What that means is that the students are rarely involved in planning how they learn. They're told what their learning goals are, what to read, what to discuss, what to reflect on, and how their learning is assessed. So, as I said, learning design is defined in this study as an approach used by the learner to plan their learning. This means the power of learning design moves away from the teacher to the learner. And I think the shift of power is vital to help students become more autonomous. Allowing students to design their own learning in modules does not have to mean that traditional teaching methods are redundant. The student can build in lectures, seminars, workshops into their learning designs. As long as they create their designs before the formal teaching takes place. This means that they have to think through the learning design process before the teacher introduces the topic. As they learn, they can use the learning design map to record them and monitor and evaluate the process of learning. If teachers continue to create learning designs of how they would learn a topic, these can be used by students to check their designs against. So what this intervention is hoping to do is to train students to ask the questions they need to ask about their learning and to have conversations with themselves about their learning. Some questions students could use are on the screen, and these are questions such as, what are my learning goals? What resources will I use? What do I already know about the topic? Do I have any knowledge gaps? How will I fill these knowledge gaps? How will I know that I have covered the important points? How can I improve my learning process? So this is a view of the design map, just a small section of it. And it's, in a way, how we hope to help students externalize these internal conversations. So externalization is necessary so that learning designs can be compared with others and improved. Most students are familiar with spider diagrams. These are usually used when revising for exams in schools. Spider diagrams are usually created using pen and paper to map out a subject. The same principles can be used to help students map out their learning designs. In the context of this study, the Metacognitive Learning Design Map attempts to externalize the metacognitive processes taking place in the mind using the mind maps. Sharma and Boo's 2011 says that metacognitive processes are involved in regulating the learner's thought processes that control the learning strategies they use. So, onto the technology. So as I said before, mind mapping technology is used to help students create their learning designs. A template is produced using mind mapping software, and this will aid learners to externalize their learning processes. There are many free mind mapping software available to learners. Some examples are FreeMind, MindMap, and FreePlane. There are also various mind mapping apps. I'm planning to use FreePlane, which you may know about. It allows students to analyze the information contained in the maps, and this is going to be useful with my research. Study will provide participants with a USB containing the FreePlane software and instructions on how to use it. The mind map file will be shared with the researcher, and images of the learning design maps will be shared with the class. In this approach, mind mapping technology is helping learners to share and communicate their learning designs. By sharing, they are working as a collective, pooling together resources and knowledge of a topic. This approach may also help students recognize the value of sharing and talking about how they learn. So how do we enable students to create their own learning designs? The template is created by the researcher using existing knowledge on the learning process. It covers areas of planning, monitoring, evaluating, and improving learning. It has prompts to make the learner think about the different aspects of their learning process. A few sections of the map are shown on this slide. I will read out some of the prompts because the screen is probably not big enough. Why do I need to learn this topic? How does this topic link with other topics in my module? How is this topic relevant to the program I'm studying? How could this topic be useful to me in my future career? New knowledge links. What do I know about the topic that I didn't know before? How do new things I have learned link to what I already know? What did I find interesting about the topic? What aspects of the learning process worked? What aspects of the learning process didn't work? What would I change next time? So initially I designed the template, and then it was reviewed using a panel of experts. The panel was invited to review the template using an instrument to rate the usefulness of each section and prompt. The comments from the experts were analyzed and used to edit the template. Experts on the panel included module and program leaders and professors, professional support staff, graduate teaching assistants, and undergraduate students. Altogether, there was 40 members in the panel. So moving on to introducing the metacognitive learning maps to students. The idea behind the intervention is to get teachers who are the expert learners to share how they would learn the topic with student novices. The sharing is enabled by using learning design. The teacher externalizes the way they would learn the topic using a mind map of their learning design. The learning design is shared with students, teachers demonstrating the processes they use to create their learning design. Then students are asked to adjust the maps created by their teachers to highlight their own individual knowledge gaps. And as they learn the topic, they use the learning design to record how they would monitor, evaluate, and improve their learning. Module leaders provide support during this step. And in the final step, the teacher starts to fade into the background, and the student creates their learning design independently. So just an overview of the research design. I'm using a mixed methods approach. The diagram shows the exploratory sequential design used to collect the data. First, students' experience is explored using focus groups, and then the data from the focus groups are used to create questionnaires, which are administered to the module population. So the study is using 3 different topics within a module. The first topic is used to collect the baseline data. before the intervention. The second is where the metacognitive learning design map is introduced to students. The third is where students are asked to create their learning designs independently. And the module leader data is collected using an explanatory sequential design. So all that means is, first of all, questionnaires are sent out to module leaders, and then those are analysed and participants are chosen for interviews. Something that I'm planning to do is once the data is analysed from the interviews, a module will be chosen to implement the intervention. So I'm just going to talk to you a little, just give you a brief glimpse at some of the initial data coming in from module leaders. So in the pilot study, 25 module leaders were sent questionnaires, 15 responses were collected. Overall, the module leaders seem to think that students see them as the key to achieving the required grades, a source of knowledge that they can tap into, and the selector and organizer of their learning materials. And as far as staff expectations go, there's general consensus that the main expectations teachers have of students is for students to take responsibility for their learning. So hopefully this intervention will be welcomed. Module leaders clearly believe that the responsibility for how students learn, evaluate and improve the way they learn lies with the student. But module leaders also seem to believe that their role is to encourage, motivate and inspire students to take responsibility for their own learning. So the next stage is introducing the map to students. So, thank you.
You have to do that thing of waiting for the microphone to run around the room. Well, the microphone attached to our helper. Any questions or comments?
Can I ask you about the mind map tools that you use? Am I right in thinking students have yet to try this tool, or some students have?
Mind mapping is used within our university currently, so they are familiar with mind mapping.
Right, okay.
So, but not on this scale.
Right,
so, and not with data being collected from those maps.
Sure. I was just interested in how students get on with mind mapping, if it's something that's sort of been introduced institutionally, because I mean I've got students who've used it really well and successfully, and I know that I kind of came to mind mapping a bit late really, and I quite like it now as a tool, but intuitively I didn't find it a natural thing to do that. Do you have students been sort of coached in how to use that, or?
I think first year students, especially undergraduate first year students, tend to, because of the spider diagram aspect, tend to like mind mapping.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's quite easy to take notes using mind maps as well. So I don't think the technology really kind of causes problems for students. I think more the academic staff who will struggle with mind maps.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it. So thank you again. Very good. And thank you to all our speakers. It was a really interesting session, so thank you. As much as I see your thoughts,